In this week's national interest, we step away from Ukraine, Russia, Pakistan, all the stuff that's happening across the world. That is quite important, by the way. But also important is what's happening within the country. And this week, for national interest, we focus on a state, that is Karnataka. And we come with a little warning, a gentle, polite warning. Karnataka, you have a problem. Why? Because Bengaluru, what used to be called Bangalore, Bengaluru, the capital of Karnataka, and the engine of India's startup and tech entrepreneurship, is also blessed with great weather. That you know, that's no news. By far the best weather for an Indian metro city. That is one incredible asset, but not the only thing that attracts the ambitious, well-educated, entrepreneurial young to the city, to Bengaluru. It has a lot more to add to the weather advantage. Great educational institutions that ensure a plentiful supply of talent to people, these enterprises, new jobs, loads of upcoming housing, and an improving infrastructure. At long last, it's still a work in progress, but you can see a lot of infrastructure finally being built in Bengaluru. Plus, there are these great scientific institutions which also build an environment for innovation, for thinking new ideas and research. The biggest advantage, however, is also Bengaluru's happy, youthful, let it be, an inclusive social culture. If Mumbai was India's dream city in the past, both for entrepreneurship, job opportunities, and also add to that glamour, Bengaluru it is now. For 2 decades now, since I began traveling to Bengaluru sort of frequently, I have maintained that at any time when you feel low or hassled in any part of India, come to Bengaluru and you will feel better. It was on one of those early visits to the city when North India was burning under its toughest summer in many years. The monsoon had been delayed, that a late night storm broke out over Bangalore. And that gave me the spark of that week's national interest article headline, Bangalore, the feel-good city. Why? The argument was that if we in India also started giving our cities and states names like the Americans do, New York, the Big Apple, Chicago, the Windy City, Virginia is for lovers, so on and so forth, what shall we call Bangalore but the feel-good city? That is why the divisive stuff happening in Karnataka right now and its capital is like an ill wind blowing over it. Now, politics of a linguistically divisive kind, we know, combined with militant trade unionism, had nearly laid low, nearly destroyed the miracle of Bombay then. The last thing India deserves is worse happening in Bengaluru now. That is precisely what India's foremost biotech entrepreneur, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, is exercised about. She tweeted about this, appealing to her Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai to intervene and restore sanity. And that brought a storm of trolling and protests from the other side. So after several communally divisive moves, this was triggered. Her response was triggered by the egregious bans or exclusion of Muslim traders from the neighborhoods of Hindu temples and religious events. As if on cue, this was followed by orchestrated boycott calls on halal products. An ordinary Muslim in Karnataka will immediately see this as a kind of economic apartheid. In the larger picture, this would and should be seen as a devastating threat to social harmony, purely driven by political purpose. The state will go to the assembly polls in about a year from now. The BJP runs a government here after grabbing power from the Congress-JDS alliance through defections. It has changed its chief ministers midstream from Yediyurappa to Bommai, Basavaraj Bommai. It is battling dissidents, has a weak compromise chief minister and has indifferent performance through these years. Karnataka is also unlike many other states where the BJP can simply roll over the opposition, particularly when the Congress is the main opposition. In Karnataka, Congress and JDS are not as weak as the opposition might be in many other states. Definitely as the Congress might be in many other states. That's why the need for the usual formula of polarization. Now, what works in Gujarat and what worked again in Uttar Pradesh now for the third time should work in Karnataka too. That's a logic. It might work indeed. And in politics, what wins you elections is the most perfect way forward. Never mind the morality or social consequences. Now, for about a decade now, the BJP's strategic approach has been quite simple. It is to orchestrate a sharp Hindu-Muslim polarization and then rendering the advantage of Muslim votes to the so-called secular parties irrelevant. They've done this in Uttar Pradesh, which has 20% Muslim vote. If it can do that in Uttar Pradesh, it can do it in Karnataka, which has much less Muslim vote. At the same time, it can use the presence of a sizable number of Muslim voters to polarize Karnataka on Hindu-Muslim lines. In most states, if the BJP can get 50% of the Hindu vote, it's home. It wins irrespective of where the Muslims vote. The BJP, however, is also conscious that this formula did not fully work in the last state elections in Karnataka in 2018. It had the advantage then of fighting against an incumbent. Now it is the incumbent. This is also a state known for its seesawing politics. Prime Minister Modi addressed more than 25 election rallies in Karnataka, and yet the BJP came up short. Until, of course, it fixed it through elections later, about a year later. Today, on the other hand, the BJP is the incumbent with a very weak chief minister. His predecessor, Yediyurappa, is angry, resentful. He is a silent dissident and a stronger claimant to the Lingayat vote, without which BJP is a cipher in Karnataka. Like Yediyurappa, Bommai is also a Lingayat, but not with the kind of mass base that Yediyurappa has. In fact, with a fraction of his mass following, if at all. Now, we know that this BJP, in any case, treats every election like a life and death battle. And we recently saw that play out in the municipal elections in Hyderabad. No election is too small for the BJP. This is the party's only southern redoubt. Now, Karnataka is not just any other election. It's not a municipal election. This is the party's only southern redoubt. And if stronger, more sharply divisive politics will get it across the line in 2023, so be it. Now, this divisiveness is upsetting social cohesion, and it can throw the bright young people thronging to Bengaluru with billion-dollar ideas in their creative minds off balance. I can do no better than quote from BJP's own Tejasvi Surya, its elected Lok Sabha member from Bengaluru South. Now, he reminded us on the last National Day of the Startups that his city was home to 40% of all of India's unicorns and soonicorns, or soon to be unicorns. The more updated data I found right now on ventureintelligence.com, and I'm sharing a link with you, that tells us that 37 of the 95 confirmed Indian unicorns today are in Bengaluru. For comparisons, Mumbai had 17, Gurugram 13, Delhi and Noida 4 each, a total of 38. So you need to add all these cities to come to a level that Bangalore boasts of by itself. Now, if you come to Bengaluru, you can feel, sniff and hear the spirit and effervescence of optimism. From its commercial buildings and IT parks to its coffee shops to its restaurants, bars, pubs, party circuit, and even the airport waiting areas where you see young people lost in their laptop screens, designing products, cutting deals and scripting new dreams, not whiling away their time watching reels, as Prime Minister Modi chided young board exam aspirants in his interaction with them this Friday. Now, are we exaggerating in describing the politics of polarization as an ill wind? After all, what's new? All of India now has politics of polarization. So, let's check out the recent series of happenings in Karnataka. The hijab row, now the ban on temple traders. Now, remember, freedom to carry out your business anywhere in India is a fundamental right. New laws are being enacted, and activism is picking up on bovine cattle, halal meat boycott, all fit into the same disturbing pattern. The state has also seen love jihad crimes and killings. The print correspondent Anusha Ravi had investigated and reported the story on the Muslim young man whose body was found on the rail tracks near Belagavi some time back. He was murdered apparently for dating a Hindu woman. Her family is alleged to have killed him, and many members of the family were later arrested. Now, is it anybody's case that social cohesion is not a prerequisite for entrepreneurship to flourish anywhere? We can do no better than compare the fate of the nations. Who puts any money, enterprise, or creativity in Pakistan today? In fact, their talent and their capital has been running away overseas for a long time now. Or in Myanmar, how badly has Sri Lanka suffered since the rise of the Rajapaksa-led Sinhala chauvinism? Why is UAE, especially Dubai, such a magnet for the subcontinent's entrepreneurs despite being an Islamic monarchy? Because it has social cohesion. That's true of Singapore as well. So let me just conclude by saying that it is today's creative, youthful entrepreneurship that builds startups worth billions and fuels the growth of a nation, particularly a nation like India, which is lacking in natural resources, very little oil, if any, very little precious minerals, and what is there is not even being exploited properly. Social cohesion, harmony, and inclusive culture are the necessary prerequisites, preconditions for that virtuous ecosystem. If Karnataka's politics is threatening to rob Bengaluru of this now, it is indeed an ill wind. How else would you describe it? You have a euphemism? You can find one for me. It's sadder still if this ill wind is blowing under the watch of a chief minister who inherited his political stature, the mantle, from his late father and former chief minister S.R. Bommai. S.R. Bommai, by the way, was a follower of M.N. Roy and a radical humanist. Those guys believe in no religion and put the human being above all gods.